No one wants to leave this earth with regrets. So we don't know what's going to happen. If we don't take full advantage of today, then it's nobody's fault but our own.
Unlost Cause is a community that shares stories of individuals 40 and beyond who found the courage to reclaim their dreams and live without regrets. I'm David New, and I hope these stories help you find joy, purpose, and passion in a life true to you. Today's Unlost Cause guest is Stephanie M. Jones, a thought leader in the travel and tourism industry. She's recognized for her transformative sustainable tourism initiatives that advance diversity, equity, and inclusion within the global industry. As the founder and managing director of Disrupt for Change, she has over 2 decades of experience in educating and empowering underrepresented communities and small tourism businesses. Her passion project, The Selfish Luxury Traveler, will launch this fall with plans to host retreats for women of color over 50 who share her love for travel, self-care, and joyful living starting in 2026. So welcome to Unlost Cause, Stephanie.
Thank you, David, for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so why don't we just first start by sharing with the audience what your Unlost Cause is. I love this company name, The Selfish Luxury Traveler.
That is my lost cause. And I'm so glad that I found it at this stage of my life because I need it. And I'm sure other women who have been dedicating their lives to serving others, taking care of others, working hard for their careers, and not focusing so much on themselves, self-care, and getting out there and exploring the world and enjoying life, they can relate to the selfish luxury traveler. So I'm really excited that I'm going to be launching this venture this fall. I've traveled the world, but there's still so much more to see. But I have a lot of friends that say, oh, I want to travel with you one day. And I'm like, okay, come on. I'll plan the retreat or I'll plan the trip. And you just show up and I'm going to make certain we have a wonderful time, immerse ourselves in the local culture, have a lot of silly fun, and just enjoy living, and exploring the world. So I'm really excited about the Selfish Luxury Traveler.
Yes, and one of the things that struck me is sometimes that we get these sparks of inspiration when we have these dislocations in life. It could be someone passes, we get laid off. But you alluded to a health scare that may have prompted you to evaluate things differently. Can you share what occurred there?
Sure, absolutely. Well, if there is such a thing of traveling too much or travel burnout, I reached my peak in 2023. I don't know how I traveled as much as I did. I think I traveled to 5 different countries, all over the United States speaking. Then I planned 2 major events. So probably around October, right before my second event, I really started to feel burnt out. And I ignored it because I'm like, you got to get through this. You got to show up. You got to be, that energetic, motivating person because you're going to be on stage and you're there to motivate and inspire people. And so I pushed myself through it. But I was on the other end of that. I had planned to take my first solo trip on a cruise where I would do nothing but sleep, spend time at the spa, and do nothing, lay on the balcony, reading books. Yeah. And I was able to do that. But the day before, but here's the thing, the day after my event in October, I had to fly from one destination to the fly home, unpack, repack. Then the next day I flew to Miami to speak at another event. And then the next day I was supposed to board my ship for my cruise.
Wow, that's a lot.
So the day that I spoke, I spoke during the day, then they had a gala that evening. I started to feel just really fatigued that evening, but I knew I had to go back to the hotel and print out my boarding pass. So while I'm waiting there at the front desk for them to print out my boarding pass, I start leaning on the desk and I'm like, I feel like I want to pass out. And I'm like, okay, I have to get to my room. It took every ounce of energy I had left to make it to my hotel room. I was literally dragging the wall, trying to get to my room, to get to my bed. I finally made it to the hotel, my room, and just spread out on the bed. I couldn't move. And I'm laying there like, how are you going to make it to the ship tomorrow? And I did. I just lay there. I don't even know how I took my clothes off, how I got in the shower, but I ended up waking up feeling a little better and having just enough energy to, get my bags, take a Uber down to the port to board the ship. Now, the great thing is I had pre-planned to have a 90-minute massage as soon as I got on the ship. And
Priorities.
so, absolutely. And so when I made it onto the ship, I met up with the massage therapist and she looked at me and she said, "Oh my God, I'm looking at your eyes and I can tell you're just fatigued. You're just exhausted." And I'm like, "I am." And so that was one occurrence, barely being able to make my solo cruise. I made it through the cruise. I told the wait staff or the people at the restaurants, I said, "I don't want to eat dinner with anybody. I'm not here to socialize. I don't want to talk to anybody. So please seat me by myself." So the whole cruise, I didn't have dinner with anybody. I didn't talk to anyone. There was one woman who sat at the table while I was waiting for my spa service, and she wanted to strike up a conversation. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to talk. So I said, "Excuse me, I have to go to the bathroom," because I didn't want to talk to anybody. I was so sad. I'm like, I don't want to talk about work. I don't want to tell people what I want to do. I'm not here to make friends. I'm truly here to take care of myself because I knew after my cruise, I still had 2 speaking engagements in November. Then I had a trip to West Africa, right before Christmas. So I made it through the cruise, felt a lot better, at the end of the cruise. Then again, I went on to speak in November, made it on the ship, made it to Senegal, and got there. And I decided, I said, I'm not taking my computer. I'm not even going to work because I just really don't have the capacity mentally. Made it on the ship. And then all the while we're moving around on the excursions, I'm thinking to myself, boy, I would have canceled this trip if it wasn't for my daughter, because as much as I wanted to go to West Africa, and it was my first time visiting West Africa, I would have stayed. I would have canceled the trip, but I knew my daughter was excited to go because Africa was her 7th continent. So I said I couldn't cancel the trip. But I knew during that cruise, I said, you know what? I got to change some things because I'm not feeling well. And then I wasn't feeling well inside. I was just contemplating and counting down the days to get home. 3 days before Christmas, I started having stroke-like symptoms, chest, tightness, face, one side of my face tingling. And I called my primary care physician and she said, "No, get to ER." I went to ER the next morning. They took some tests. They said, "Well, we don't see where you've had a stroke, but we want to transport you to the hospital where they can take further tests." So they put me in an ambulance, took me to the hospital. And I was in the hospital for 5 days, just them running every test they could think about. And the neurologist came. He says, "We don't see that you've had a stroke. Doesn't mean that you're not on the verge of having a stroke or worse if you don't make some changes." So lying in a hospital bed, I said, no, I have to change my life because I'm working so hard to help other people at the expense of my own health. And I know that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. So it was that experience, being in a hospital 3 days before Christmas, that made me recognize that I needed to reprioritize my time and start taking better care of myself.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I think everyone has that spark, and yours sound like you got pretty close to that edge and you're able to have some realizations and do something positive with that. So kudos to you for that realization and making those changes. So one of the things I want to rewind the clock a little bit is, you've done an amazing amount of service and giving back to the community before now trying to focus more on yourself. So when you were a child, did you have a lot of exposure to either parents, other role models, families and friends who were doing a lot of service to their community? Like, is that what inspired you to really embrace that?
My mother was an entrepreneur for 35 years, and she was a salon owner. So I grew up in her salon, and I watched as she would be working on people's hair, also being their counselor. If they needed help with rent, giving them money. If they needed groceries, taking them to the grocery store. So I grew up watching my mother, although she was an entrepreneur, but she was, I would say, also a servant leader, in the community where, she not only made women look beautiful on the outside, but she also stepped in to try to fill the gap when people needed help. But also, I'm the youngest of 13 children.
Wow.
Yeah, my father passed when I was 2 years old, so I don't really remember my father. But I say that because, I grew up in the back of my mother's salon, so that also sparked my desire for entrepreneurship, to become an entrepreneur. But my mother was my role model because when my father passed, there were still 10 of us at home for my
Yeah.
mom to take care of. And so, being the youngest, I would always be the one kind of standing back, watching everybody else do their thing, get in trouble, make all those mistakes. And I would always say, I'm not going to do that when I'm grown. So I kind of learned from my older siblings about life lessons and choices, and decided at a young age that I wasn't going to pursue certain paths. I was also the first person in my family to go to college, being
Really?
the
Wow.
youngest. Yeah, and the thing about it is my mom, as a single mom, even though she's an entrepreneur, but, having that many kids, she still had to make certain that we had a roof over our head and food on the table. And I remember my senior year, she said to me, I really can't afford to put you through college. But I knew I wanted to go to college because I felt like that was my pathway to the life that I wanted to live. And I'm from Detroit. We didn't grow up in poverty, but we didn't have everything either. A bit, again, being raised by a single mom. But I never wanted for anything. There are some things that I did want, clothes and things of that nature, but I never needed the necessities. And so I grew up watching my mom, and I became very inspired with her as a woman who took care of her kids even when my father died. And social services wanted to come out and help her because the neighbors thought that she has all these kids, she needs help. But my mom told them that as long as she's able-bodied, she's going to work and take care of her kids, and she didn't need any welfare or social services. And she did. She never accepted it. And for my mom to be a single mom, she always had money in the bank or under the bed mattress. And she was the type of person too that when people come around, even with my siblings and then, her grandkids, she would always put money in our hands, like whether we needed it or not. She just had a giving spirit to want to help people, you know? And so I think, growing up and watching her servant leadership, her just wanting to make certain that other people were taken care of, I think it really influenced me, and made me take the path that I've been on as an adult throughout my career.
That's a beautiful story about your mom's incredible woman, and it sounds very inspiring. So, the other question is, now that you're starting a travel service, did you have a lot of travel as a child that lit that travel bug, or like when did that travel bug get lit?
To answer the question, no, because the only travel I did as a child, was occasionally my mom would take the young ones on a train to Houston, Texas, where she's from, to visit my grandparents and aunts and uncles. Or we would pile in a car and carpool to, again, Texas. So, no, I didn't really have much exposure at all traveling for leisure purposes. Really, my first travel experiences happened when I was a young adult and probably in my early mid 20s. And I was working for an African American history museum in Detroit as a marketing and PR director. And we were in the process of building a new museum in Detroit. And my role as PR and marketing director was to go out there and promote it. So, a year before the museum opened, along with the CEO of the museum, we planned a media tour. And we went to DC and New York and LA to meet with media boards, editorial boards to promote the museum. And that was really my first experience traveling, getting on a plane and traveling to other destinations within the States. But while I was traveling, it had a profound effect on me because when you grow up and you don't have access or exposure to external influences, it really narrows your focus or your frame of reference about the world
Mm-hmm.
and cultures. And so being able to travel from DC to LA to New York, places that are just huge, full of people from all places, was eye-opening for me. And I recall coming back home on the plane, thinking to myself, I want more of this. I want to get out there and experience other people and other places and other cultures. And that's when I was bit by the travel bug.
Great, great. And so now I'm going to go back to when you're lying on that. Well, thank you for that background because I think it explains and it puts a lot of the foundational pieces together for the listeners to understand, what may be some of the motivators for Stephanie. So when you're on the doctor, he or she is telling you, you got to make some changes or you might be on the verge of a stroke. And then you started thinking, I need to take care of myself more. And how did this idea come about? Was it really fast and you were just you had a dream or you had a inspiration in the shower, or did it take some time to like ruminate and kind of it was like a slow simmer before all the pieces came together?
Well, actually, the idea to become the selfish luxury traveler was formed probably the middle part of 2023. I started then just really doing a lot of self-reflection and realizing that I wasn't happy. As much as I was serving and helping other people, and I love the industry that I work in and I love the work that I do, but personally, I wasn't self-fulfilled and I wasn't happy. And so I started doing some self-reflecting mid 2023. And again, this is the year where I was doing all this crazy traveling. And what I realized is that I don't do anything for me. I'm at my desk all day, every day, working to solve problems for other people. I'm traveling the country and the world, speaking on behalf of making other people's lives better. But I'm like, what do I do for me that makes me happy? I have other aspirations that I actually put on the back burner, like writing a book, starting a podcast, doing public speaking worldwide, and teaching. But I put those things on the back burner because I was compelled to lean into serving others, especially during 2020 when the pandemic hit. And so in 2023, I said, you know what? I need to become selfish, not in a negative way, but reclaiming time that I'm giving to everybody else. Reclaim some of
Mm-hmm.
that time for me to do things that make me happy. And it says, well, what makes me happy? I'm like, well, luxury travel makes me happy. Traveling. And yes, I love to stay in five-star hotels. I love to travel first class. That's just what makes me happy. I haven't always been able to do that, but those things bring me joy. I love the spa. So whenever I travel, I spend time at the spa. I'm not a big adventurous person. I'm not a big foodie, but I do love, fine dining. But I love the convenience of luxury travel. Let me give you an example. Having my global entry, status where I don't have to stand in line. That's luxury travel for me.
Yeah, yeah,
Having enough Delta awards where, I reach platinum status where I can check in at the priority counter. That's luxury travel to me as well. So having those, for me, luxury conveniences, and yes, staying in nice hotels, being in first class, those things matter to me at this stage of my life because I've worked hard for it and I believe I deserve it.
One of the things I have to ask is like, giving so much of yourself to other people And then I know you said selfish, but not in a pejorative way, but in like self-care, like prioritizing. If I don't take care of myself, I can't take care of other people.
Exactly.
But
Hmm.
do you still feel a little bit of like guilt about that? Like, hey, I've got so much I could give to other people. Maybe I should keep going down that path, or your ego or identity attached to that? Or was it like the time is right for Stephanie, so I just close that chapter and I'm moving on to a new one?
That's a great question. So when I started The Selfish Luxury Traveler mid 2023, I did so as a blog. And the purpose was so that I could write about what I'm experiencing and to be intentional about taking time for myself to actually write about what I'm experiencing. So I started it really as a blog just to try to create more alignment in how I spent my time. Now, fast forward to December when I'm in the hospital and realizing that I absolutely must change and focus on self-care. Over the holidays when I'm back home, I really started think about what does that look like? Because to be honest with you, I lost Stephanie, the woman, the individual, and really became Stephanie, the CEO, Stephanie, the change agent, Stephanie, the leader. And that's what the world knows me as. So I felt like I really needed to take time to find myself and to rediscover who I am and what makes me happy. So over the holiday, I made a commitment to myself that for the year of 2024, I was not traveling out of the country. And I was going to limit my travels. If I traveled domestically, it would be one trip a month. But when I traveled, it wouldn't be for me speaking at an industry event or me teaching anyone. All of the travels would be for me to invest in self and professional development, going to writers' conferences, going to conferences to learn how to podcast, going to conferences to become a content creator, things that would feed me personally and help me grow personally so that I could then really start to be more intentional about prioritizing time for myself. So in 2024, I didn't travel to any industry events. I didn't leave the country. I probably did about 6 trips domestically, and they were all focused on me, self-care, and professional development. But during the course of 2024, it truly was a struggle for me not to feel guilty giving all of my time to my work and serving others. And I would go back and forth where I still had one foot grounded in my work and helping and serving other people. But occasionally both feet would go back into
Yeah.
that grind.
Yes.
So I would go back and forth, back and forth. And it really literally took me until October of last year to give myself permission to be okay with reprioritizing myself, because I've kind of reflected back on how and who I was serving and whether or not people were showing up for me when I'm trying to help them. And it's like, well, why are you giving so much of yourself and your time and your heart to help some people who may not even want your help, or to show up and speak at conferences for free when everybody else in that room, they were able to have their employers pay for it? So I'm having these conversations with myself to really put things in perspective, to say, you know what, it's nobody's fault but my own. But not that it's my fault. It's just, again, me making the choice to care more for other people's needs than my own. And it was then last October when I got really, really selfish with my time professionally. But then I also started looking personally. What changes do I need to make personally? And so again, that's when I decided, you know what? Because I really hadn't blogged for almost a year, The Selfish Luxury Traveler. But I went back to that website right before Christmas last year, and I'm like, this is some really great content. And then I started thinking about the women, my friends who are now retired, who've been in corporate America and just really don't take the time to invest in self care or travel the world. I travel a lot with my adult daughter. We are the best travel buddies and we have a wonderful time exploring the world together. And I have so many friends who have adult daughters who admire me and my daughter's travel. So I'm like, you know what? I want to help create opportunities for retired women, corporate women who don't prioritize self care, and mothers and daughters to travel the world and experience the world together, or with like minded women who just want to focus on self care and joyful living.
One of the things that you just mentioned, Stephanie, that actually gave me goosebumps and I had to write down that I wanted to follow up is you said you gave yourself permission, right? And I think in concept, that's super easy. Like, oh, I'm gonna give myself permission to do this, to do that. But it can also be incredibly hard, challenging, and part of our ego to cut across it. So when you gave yourself permission to focus on prioritize yourself more and be selfish in that regard, for a listener, they might be like, oh, that was easy. Like, of course, give myself permission. But why do you think it's so hard for most people to give themselves permission to be a certain way or take certain actions?
Well, I am an empath, so I feel called to help people in need, sometimes when they don't even know they're in need. But that's just who I am and who I've always been. And sometimes to the detriment, again, of me prioritizing myself and taking care of myself. So that desire to want to support and help other people, and I'm going to speak to women, not that men don't feel this way, but especially women, because we are innately nurturers. That's how we're
100%.
born and we're raised up to take care of our families and to go and volunteer and to lead in church and to wear all of these different hats, where oftentimes we put our own needs aside because of this obligation to show up and be there for everybody else. And so I think, yeah, we need to learn how to give ourselves permission to be selfish. Because again, you said it earlier, if we work ourselves to death, then we're not going to be here to help anybody. And so we have to put things in perspective in our self care, and not just self care, but enjoying life, whatever that looks like for us, defining that and then being intentional about doing it. And I think for me, I'm going to be reaching a milestone birthday next year, 60.
Congratulations.
And I thank you. And I'm like, okay, what have I done for me over the past 60 years? You
Yes.
know? And so now instead of looking back, because I started feeling guilty about not doing some things that I wish I had done for myself earlier. But I'm like, no, I'm not going to feel guilty. I don't have any regrets about anything I've done, any folks I've helped over the years. And it doesn't mean I'm not going to continue to help people. I'm just going to help in a different way where it doesn't require so much of my time or for me to show up. So I'm now transitioning a lot of my work to on-demand access. So yeah, it's like I do want to travel the world, see more of the world, and I invite, women, who may not want to travel alone or may be anxious about taking the time or investing in themselves to experience the world. I encourage them, because if not today, when? Because tomorrow is not promised to us. And lying in that hospital bed reminded me that I didn't have to be here talking to you today if I would not have become intentional about self-prioritizing my health.
In last year, 2024, you promised yourself that, I wrote down, you're not going to travel and you're really going to focus on finding yourself, your drivers and things that you're passionate about. When you share that with your friends, families, and colleagues, because so much of your identity has been give, 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 what was their reaction? On a scale, I could see one person saying like, What? That's so selfish. That's messed up. The other is like, oh my goodness, I wish you had done that earlier because you've given so much. Like, where did people fall on that scale?
Well, you know what, David? Most people don't even know yet. I haven't shared
Oh,
this
okay.
with anyone, but I'm going to have to share it before the podcast. But to be honest, I have a handful of very close women who are just like my sisters, who are they have been my biggest cheerleaders, cheering for me, in my work. But they have been on this journey with me,
Hmm.
as I have confided in them about my health struggles, but my struggles to put myself first. And they are continuing to be my biggest cheerleaders as what I'm calling, trying to enter into this soft season of my life. I'm done with the grind. In 2024, that's when I gave up the grind and being on the perpetual roller coaster ride. I got off the roller coaster ride and I have no intentions to get back on it. So I do have a small core group of friends who have just cheered me on and supported me. Now, on the work side of things, the only folks that I have really shared about some transitions that I'm making professionally are some of my board members for the nonprofit that I currently run. They are very supportive. They get it. They see how hard I've worked. And, even in this current environment in our country, politically, it's even more challenging to do work that has DEI in its DNA. And so they recognize and support the fact that I want to start focusing on me and making certain that I'm taking care of myself, not just health wise, but financially and every other way. So I am planning a series of emails to go out actually starting this week to different target markets, from our funders to our industry partners to those that we serve, to let them know that there has been a transition. And what the transition is the nonprofit work that I've been doing that has been keeping me up all night is going to be dissolved this summer. But that doesn't mean that the work and the mission and my desire to continue to help people will cease. I've launched another venture called Disrupt for Change. Same mission, but approaching it differently. Really streamlining how we are helping people and being more intentional about creating that alignment where I now have working hours.
And when you're thinking about drafting those emails to close the chapter of the other nonprofit, how do you feel about it? Is there a sense of like silent accomplishment, a little bit of regret, a little bit of fear, happiness? How are you feeling about that?
Well, I'll tell you, 3 months ago, before I went to Europe in March with my daughter to celebrate her 35th birthday and did a lot of self-reflecting while I was away. But 3 months ago, I was still feeling this guilt of making the announcement. Well, actually, 3 months ago, I had not actually fully committed to dissolving the nonprofit so that I can make time to do the things I want to do for me. It wasn't until I came back from Europe, and while I was in Europe, that I said, you know what? I can't keep operating with one foot in and one foot out. I'm never going to be able to really focus on the things I want to do for me, finishing my book, public speaking, traveling the world, until I close that door. And so when I came back and I just made that commitment to do that, and it wasn't an easy commitment. I just had to do it. And the first thing I did was reach out to my board chair to say, this is what I have to do, not later, but now, and why. And she said, I fully commit you. I'm sorry, I fully support you,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
commit me, because sometimes I feel like I need to be committed. But anyway, so on the board side, they understand. And I finally got to the place where, and I had to hear it, for some reason, sometimes you take things more to heart when you hear other people say it. I know I've made a lot of impact, not just through this. I've been servant leader for over 30 years and doing work to impact communities. So I know I've made an impact through doing the work that I've been doing. But sometimes it helps to hear from those that you've been serving, from people from afar that say, I've been watching you, I've been seeing what you're doing, and you're making such a great difference and impact. And so I resolved that, you know what? I've made the impact. Maybe what I need to do now, not maybe, but it's time to pass the torch to younger people to keep this work going and be okay, not feeling guilty because I did my part.
So if I read between the lines, maybe one word or emotion would be like, it felt like the time was right and you were ready to pass the torch.
Absolutely. Because again, there are some really dynamic, intelligent, brilliant, young Black people in the travel and tourism industry that are disrupting, and making a lot of change in this industry. And my role now is, how do I support them? How do I mentor them? How do I leverage my relationships if they need an introduction? How do I share, my thought leadership to help better position them to carry on the work? And so that's really the role that I've taken, as one of a mentor and advisor.
You mentioned a lot about this self-reflection in 2024 and then also going to Paris. Do you have any hacks or unlocks about how you do it? Is it meditation? Is it journaling? Like everyone has a glass of wine and
Yeah.
scribing. Like everyone has their
It's all of that.
unlock. Oh, okay.
But no, for me, the other thing I really lost over the years, because again, when I was traveling the world, I was never home, did impact my marriage, but it also impacted my spiritual walk. And in 2024, I needed to reconnect with God, who I believe in, and to seek his guidance, because I needed to make certain that the decisions I was making were not, yeah, they were about me, but they weren't about me. But I think I also needed to get validation that he would be okay with me moving on and doing something else. Not that, again, I'm still serving and helping people, but just in a different way. And so I got that confirmation, that's the word I'm looking for, through prayer, through meditation, and a lot of just being quiet and still. And so that's how I was able to get to that place of moving from guilt to permission.
I love that. Guilt to permission. So I want to change gears a little bit and talk a little bit more about this, what you're going to be launching, the Selfish Luxury Traveler. Now, we've had Andrew Motowala on the show, and he talks about his travel business, and he has like this very analytical kind of CRO perspective from his startup, where he like ran these Facebook ads to see if there was demand and did some demand testing to see if it would make sense. I can tell by the way you structure your thoughts, you're also very strategic and analytical. So I'm curious, did you just jump and think there was a market there, or did you do something very structured in terms of testing the demand before committing like Andrew did?
Well, here's the thing. One, I learned about you through Andrew.
Okay.
I watched the podcast episode with him, and Andrew and I just had a meeting 2 days ago. Because
Wonderful.
I connected with him because I love the whole concept of the good life abroad, and had been thinking about a similar concept, but even more so when I was doing research, because it is my desire to go live abroad for a month or two, maybe once or twice a year. And we had a great conversation, but I really enjoyed listening to his insights. I heard a lot of parallel, as I was listening to him. But I am very strategic in my thought processes. And initially, that Selfish Luxury Travel, I'm like, you know what? Maybe this would be a passion project, because now that I'm making this transition and focusing on me, I'm like, okay, for me, it's like, if I'm going to invest time doing something, I want to make some money. I want to monetize it, but I don't want to have to do a lot of work, So I started thinking, okay, where would I find my target audience? So really last year, I started joining a lot of different Black expat groups, because there are a lot of Black people that are leaving the US and moving to other parts of the world. And we're everywhere. And so I've kind of been a fly on the wall of all of these different Facebook groups, listening to the conversations, hearing what the pain points are, and especially for Black women. And one of the key things, I hear that among Black women is, the fear of traveling by themselves or the importance of finding a community when they do travel that they can be part of. And the fact that, again, a lot of people who are considering relocating or leaving the country and moving abroad, they want to go for extended periods of time just to explore, because that's where I'm at right now. I'm planning to go spend a month in Portugal, Colombia, because I want to go and experience these places to see, well, is this some place I might want to settle down? Not to say I'm leaving the US right now, but if I do, I want to have more of a frame of reference. And so that was one way I've been tuning into, the travel needs and the emotional community interests of women of color that are in my age category. The other part is because of my community of friends, knowing who they are and what their travel aspirations are. And one thing I'll say about my community of friends is that when we're together, we have silly fun, we laugh, there's no judgment. It's just a nice, easy time together. And I know that's not always the case in women groups, especially when you're traveling. So it's important too to make certain that when I plan these groups, that it is with women of like mind, heart, and right intention, that going for the sole purpose of taking care of ourselves and having silly fun. We're not there to judge each other. And yeah, leave your baggage at home. We don't want, it's like, okay, this trip is intentional about self-care, because if we can't find that at home in the States by ourselves, then we should be able to carve out time and invest in having these types of experiences with other women in other places around the world, because we know when we get back home, then we're going back to, people pulling on us and probably focusing less on self-care in ourselves.
And, one of the challenges I think is when starting a passion project or a business is, trying to find how customized or niche do we want to be versus very wide, right? And so for you, it's very targeted Black women luxury. And so, I'm just about to publish this other guest next week. And he's like, yeah, people tell me I should be niche, but I'm just trying to find traction and just go throw a wide net and just, see if these wells will hold water or, oil will spout out, right? So I'm just curious, like, was it strategically to go very niche, or were you like, hey, I want to do this, and if I can find other women to come travel with me, even better. So it wasn't as strategic. So just curious how intentional it was.
It's very intentional. Because again, I am very selective about who I travel with. I have had some travel experiences with friends where I coordinated a cruise. And then when we boarded the ship, everybody thought I was their Julie from the Love Boat. And I'm like, no, I paid for this trip too. I want to relax and have a good time. Every time you have a problem, don't bring it to me. Go find somebody that works for the ship. And then I have, most of my friends are A-type personalities, very strong-willed and strong-minded. And sometimes when you put too many of those women together, they butt heads, because then it becomes a competition. And so I'm like, I don't want that environment, and so I'm being very strategic, about the women, and doing small groups too, because I don't want to travel with a group of 20 women, especially if we don't all know each other. And I really want to try to build this as a travel club, an exclusive travel club.
Oh, okay.
So where folks know each other, and then you can invite somebody that you know to come. That's a thought. I haven't landed on that, but because I want to make certain that these experiences are genuinely centered on community and sisterhood and joyful living and self-care without bringing all of these other life distractions into it because somebody else might not be ready to, I guess, engage in that type of environment. And again, I'll give you another example. Another friend of mine who belongs to another group of friends, when I invited her to have dinner with some of my friends, and she was like the next day, oh my God, that was so refreshing. She's like, whenever I'm with my friends, it's always judging each other. We're so competitive. And I'm like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. So I do believe, if you're going to spend thousands of dollars traveling abroad, then you want to be in company with people that are like-minded, where you're going to have a great experience and not regret, having and made that investment and, not being around people that you feel good being around.
For these excursions or these trips that the selfish luxury traveler is going to create, how long are these going to be going for? Is it like a week or is it a month? And then, so that's one. And then my follow-up would be like, what type of activities or itinerary would you curate for these people?
Well, at a minimum, because I'm like, if you're going to spend that amount of money to travel overseas, you should stay at least 6 to 7 nights.
Okay.
If it was me by myself, then it would be 2 weeks. But
Yeah.
I recognize that not everybody can afford to go away for 2 weeks or have the time to go away for 2 weeks. At a minimum, 6 to 7 nights. As far as the itinerary, most definitely there will be opportunities to engage with local cultures and to engage with local communities and businesses. That will be intentional because as a former tour operator myself, I believe in making certain that there is economic opportunity for underrepresented businesses and communities when I travel. So that will be an intentional part. And that could be through tours or culinary experiences. One of the things that will definitely be on the itinerary wherever we travel is dance lessons, a dance course on whatever the native dance is, a culinary experience where we can go and cook with locals and learn how to make recipes of local cultures. So, and then opportunities to definitely indulge in spa activities, massages, sound baths. Now, my daughter is a music therapy and she has a business. And so she's going to be part of this. She's going to provide music therapy, whether it's drum therapy, helping us write our own theme songs. So things like that again inspire fun, but self-care, but provides that local cultural immersion in the destinations that we're visiting to make certain that we're giving as much and leaving as much in those destinations and communities as we're taking away.
And if there's someone who's listening who's like, well, that sounds like it's perfect for me, or I know someone who's perfect, when do you anticipate the first opportunity to potentially launch will be, or has that already been set in stone and it's already sold out with your friends and with a waiting list?
Well, actually, what we're doing now is I'm partnering with women tour operators and DMCs, globally, as well as travel advisors who I am going to be partnering with to manage all of the booking because I don't want to do that. I just want to show up and host and have a good time with everybody. But we're planning to launch our 26-27 calendar no later than August. I do know we're going to do our first mother-daughter trip to South Africa in 2027. I have an idea where we're going in 2026, but I don't want to publicize that until we have all of our details confirmed. But people can always go to my website. They can just join the wait list to receive the brochure once we have the trips planned for 26 and 27. But it'll definitely be by August 1st that will be available on the website and people can start to book.
Yeah, and the website is selfishluxurytraveler.com.
It's theselfishluxurytraveler.com. Yeah.
Got it.
I know what we talked about, specifically this being for Black women. And, I thought about that because again, at first I'm like, yeah, women that look like me, but I have non-Black friends too, who are really great friends. And so I don't want anyone to be deterred because they're not Black. If you just want to be around a group of like-minded women, yeah, you do have to be over 50. But, if you feel like this is a community that you want to connect with, then by all means, you are welcome to participate. I say the more the merrier, the more diversity, the better, because again, we can never stop learning about each other's cultures and just building community, across races. So, so I say that to say, if you're not Black, please don't think this is not for you. But I'm going to be honest. At first, I was like, well, yeah, I want to do something, for Black women that look like me. Well, I'm still going to do that, but that doesn't mean other people aren't included.
How many people is the ideal number for these, sounds like amazing luxury trips that you're going to have?
10 to
Because
12,
oh, wow, that's super intimate because,
very
there is a
intimate.
mathematical formula. The more people you have, the harder
Yeah.
it is to get to know everyone. But 10 to 12 over the course of at least 6, 7 nights plus, you're going to be able to get to know everyone.
Yes. And I want it to be intimate because I
Mm-hmm.
want us to leave as sisters
Mm-hmm. Got
so
it.
that we'll be ready to come back and reconvene the next year and bring somebody with us.
What has been the hardest aspect of now you committed to the idea, like, putting the wheels in motion, the wheels are in motion now. What has been the biggest speed bump that you've hit thus far?
I won't even say there's been a speed bump. I think it's timing. And I say that because traditionally, I am a serious multitasker, meaning that I've never just done one thing at one time. Even if I try, it's like, okay, the way my brain works, it's like, okay, you're working on this. Oh, this is great too. Let me I'm about therapy. I just got a therapist because I felt like I needed somebody to kind of help me kind of organize all this stuff that's going on with me right now. So I started working with a therapist, and I'm also in the process of selling my house and some other stuff I'm dealing with. And I'm like, okay, big changes personally and professionally. So I started working with this therapist a couple months ago, and I'm like just laying everything out. Oh, okay, this is what's going on, and I'm doing. And she's like, Stephanie, why are you trying to do all of this at one time? Why do you have to do everything at the same time? And I was like, I don't. Nobody's making me but myself. And so I said, okay, I am going. She challenged me. She's like, okay, let's prioritize because you don't want to get back to that place where you feel like you're grinding and you're exhausted and you're not taking care of yourself. So she's like, what's the priority? So I said, well, first priority is dissolving the nonprofit and getting the Disrupt for Change, because now we're offering online courses to small businesses so that businesses around the world can have access to this and I don't have to show up and teach anymore. So plus, I'm like, okay, that'd be my primary revenue stream. So I need to get that going. So she's like, well, that's going to be the first thing you focus on. Then you can focus on dissolving the nonprofit. And then once those two things are done, then you pick up with the Selfish Luxury Traveler. So for I'll say 80%, I've been able to focus just on Disrupt for Change. I'm excited because we just launched our first 4 courses and getting a lot of really great support nationally and internationally. So I'm really excited about that. But what I have been doing is only just making contacts with the tour operators and feeding them information so that they can start doing the work on my behalf, so that when I'm ready to really start focusing on a Selfish Luxury Traveler, then a lot of the work has already been done. And it's just a matter of tweaking, the itineraries and then getting them up on the website.
And then oftentimes that we say it takes a village to pull off something of this magnitude. So I'm curious about what resources you've been able to tap in, either from the Small Business Administration, SBA, or potentially books or mentors or conferences that you may have been to that were very instrumental that you can share with the audience.
Are you referring to the Selfish Luxury Traveler venture?
Oh, no, it could be, that's probably the main one that I'd be focused on. But it could also be, just Disrupt for Change.
Here's the thing. I've been a mentor and a facilitator and a thought leader for so long in this industry, and I've spoken at so many industry events. So as much as I've given, I've also gained attending all of these different industry events, leveraging my network, of travel advisors and tour operators that I can easily, reach out to say, I'm doing this now. I want to partner with you. And people say, yeah, let's make this happen. That's the biggest thing, is leveraging my network And secondly, really leaning into educational resources that I've contributed to, but also have access to. I've also been investing, as I mentioned earlier, in different courses that specifically on designing retreats and making lots of money. So there's a couple courses that I'm in the process of taking now that, are from women who have really built multi-million dollar businesses planning retreats. So that has been the best use of my time and resources because I can take these courses on demand and, the cost to take the course is not expensive. So for me, that's how I've been really investing in learning how to build a retreat business. Now, the other thing too is I apply. I'm a lifelong learner and I don't believe I'm ever too old to stop learning. So I've been applying to different business accelerators. And most recently, I don't know if you're familiar with Pharrell Williams, Because I'm Happy Guy, the song, Because I'm
Mm-hmm.
Happy. I'll make you
Yeah.
sing, David. Well, he has a nonprofit called Black Ambition. And they are doing this accelerator for small businesses that are based in Florida, where they're connecting you with these multi-million dollar founders to really help you scale your business in a short period of time. And I applied and I got accepted. So I'm now,
Congratulations.
thank you. And so I'm now taking that course and I'm getting so many nuggets. I know a lot because I've taught myself, but sometimes the teacher needs a teacher, and especially learning different perspectives from younger people also, which I'm always open to as well. And so I'm taking several different online courses and participating in business accelerators to really position both my businesses, Disrupt for Change and the Selfish Luxury Traveler, to make money. So that's what I'm doing.
Well, that's wonderful. And I think the two notes I wrote down is Unlost Cause is really a community for people who are 40 and over who have the courage to lean into turning a lost cause into unlost cause. And I always say that there are some cons to starting late in life. Like I need more sleep, right? I don't have that energy where I can, work to pull all-nighters. But on the flip side, there are pros to starting later. One, like you mentioned, was your network. You have a lot of network out there. You could put the bat signal out that Stephanie's going to do this, and people will respond in kind to help you because you've given so much. And the second thing I love is just your attitude about being a lifelong learner, right? Not having this ego like, oh, everyone can learn. And like even the best, like, yeah, Michael Jordan had a shooting coach, right? Like everyone's got a coach to get better. And I love that attitude about, putting the ego aside and just having an open mind to going and learning, which I think is just fantastic. So one of the questions is like, now that you're pursuing this dream, how has it changed how you see yourself?
I'm proud of myself. While I was away in Europe, the other journey I started since I've been taking care of myself, I've been losing weight and feeling really good physically. And I had packed some jeans to take over to Paris because it was still kind of chilly and some clothes that I hadn't worn in a very long time. And I'm putting on these clothes while we're in Paris, and my pants are like sliding down.
The best
And I'm
feeling.
telling my daughter, I'm like, "Oh, look at this, I need a belt." And so, I'm like, wow, when I make up my mind to take care of me, wonderful things are happening and it feels great. I'm proud of myself for giving myself permission to prioritize myself and to be selfish and saying yes to myself. My daughter is my best friend and my biggest cheerleader, and we support each other. But having that relationship when you're going through these life transitions, and she's very honest as a therapist, she gives me therapy. But sometimes I'm like, I don't even want to talk to you because I talk to you too much. So that's what I'm like, let me get my own therapy. I don't want my daughter to be my therapist. But she gives great advice and lots of really honest insight, that checks me and keeps me in place and keeps me focused and accountable, to doing the things that I want to do for me. And so I'm feeling really great these days, David. And I'll be honest, it's been a long time since I've felt good about me externally and internally. And so I want to continue this journey. And I'm going to be intentional about doing what's necessary to make me happy and to take care of myself so that I can live out my latter days just being happy and enjoying life.
Since you've touched on your daughter so much and she's so instrumental, you did mention that she gifted you a book, right? And can you share with it what was the book and what was your takeaway from that?
She actually, I think a couple birthdays ago, and I don't have the book in front of me, but I think the book is called Because She Could or Because She Knew She Can or something like that. And it's a book with a lot of really great inspirational messages just about self-empowerment, but it's a journal too, you know. I've tried journaling so many times, and I think the biggest part is just not giving myself time and the focus. And then two, to be honest with you, is because for a very long time, I've lost myself in my work. And that's all I can focus on. I can't really focus on me, the person, the individual. I've only been able to focus on the work and what needs to be done. And so I've been rediscovering myself. I'm getting ready to go to a personal development retreat for women in Martha's Vineyard in a couple weeks because I need to work on me. I know I need to work on me, just rediscovering myself, my authentic voice. Not that my voice isn't authentic, but I've spoken on behalf of other people for so many years that I want to get back to that place where I can speak from here based on who I am as a woman personally and my life experiences that I hope will encourage and inspire others who may be going through certain life transitions. But that book, yeah, I keep it on my desk shelf. It's because she thinks she can. Oh no, because she believes she can. I always believe I can do, and then I do. But now it's because I believe I can in myself do the things I want to do for me. I'm now able to do those things, if that makes sense.
No, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
I think that, when you were talking, it just really struck me that when you're taking time to be for yourself and prioritizing yourself first, it's not only just, taking the time off, but it was also spiritual, like you're reconnecting with your religion. But then it was also physical because you're just like, I'm going to get, and these jeans are sliding off. So I think for the listeners, it's really important is like, our lives are very balanced and, like a car has four wheels. If you optimize one, it's all full of air and the others are flat, it's still not going to run well. And it seems like you know that and you've been focusing on holistically to really work on Stephanie.
Absolutely. I have a checklist. I'm like, okay, what's not working in my life? Okay, get rid of it. That mean people too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, I like to ask this question is if Stephanie, if you were on your deathbed, right, and you did make this decision to lean into, the selfish luxury traveler, how do you think you would feel?
Oh my God. Regretful. And I got to talk a little bit about regret because it means so much to me not to leave this life with any regrets. And when my mom was on her deathbed, okay, that was in 2013. And I was living where was I? In Atlanta, and she's in Detroit. And my mom had cancer, colon cancer, then bone cancer. I had been home beginning of June, to go to the doctor, take her to the doctor. And that was when the doctor said, everybody needs to come because I need to talk to your siblings. And they didn't feel like chemo was going to help her anymore. And so they wanted to put her in hospice. And so my mom, we didn't want to put her in hospice because my mom, she's just very stubborn, didn't want to go. So we decided to move her into my niece's home because my niece was one of her primary caregivers. And so at the time I was living in Atlanta. So I said, I'm going to go back to Atlanta, close out everything. I'm going to let my apartment go and I'm going to move back to Detroit so I can help take care of my mom. So by the end of June, when I made it back to Detroit, it was the last day my mom started to remember anybody. So I made it back just in time, for her to say my name or remember me one last time. And so over the course of the days, I stayed in her room in a reclining chair to take care of her, to clean her up and just to be there for her. And at night, I would hear her talking to God. And I remember her talking, saying, I did the best that I could. I tried to take care of everybody. But I heard a lot of regret in my mom's voice because my mom chose to make her kids her life, meaning she gave up her life to do anything because she wanted her life to be centered around her kids, adult kids. And so she didn't do the things she used to. She didn't hang out with friends. She didn't go anywhere. And what I heard as I listened to her, I think it was the night or 2 nights before she passed, was that there was regret. Because I knew her story and I knew that there was regret. So the morning she passed, I woke up just in the right time to see her take her last breath. And that day, that has just stayed with me because I made a promise to myself that I was not going, I don't know why I'm getting emotional, but I made a promise to myself that I was going to live my life intentionally. And I didn't want to leave this earth with any regrets.
It's emotional for me to hear that. And yeah, my mom did the same thing. She didn't want to go to hospice, so she was at home. So wow, that was just incredibly moving. Thank you for sharing. And well, your authenticity and your vulnerability shines through, and I think listeners can relate to that. I know that I'm on the other side. I can relate to it because I'm getting goosebumps, listening to it. And I'm jotting down notes too, right? And I do think near the end of most of these Unlost Cause episodes is when people get, when they have a time to reflect. It can get emotional because it's hard to be brave. It's hard to jump. It's easy just to go along with society's expectations and just go with the flow versus like being intentional and doing something that you shared you're doing. So I'm curious is for other listeners, Stephanie, that are listening right now, who are 40, 50, 60 or beyond, who'd say like, you know what, I had that dream to do X, but I might be too old, I might be too tired, or I didn't give myself permission, or it's not for me anymore. What advice or guidance would you whisper to them?
Get selfish and just do it. Give yourself permission because we only have one life to live and tomorrow is truly not promised to any of us. So we may not have a tomorrow to do those things that we could do today. So become selfish if you need to, take back some of your time and prioritize yourself. And, don't be afraid to spend money on yourself, especially if you work hard. You deserve it. Do those things that bring you joy. Figure out what it is that brings you joy and then be intentional about doing it. Because again, no one wants to leave this earth with regrets. And, we're living in some very challenging times in our country. And now things are becoming challenging around the world. So we don't know what's going to happen. And if we don't take full advantage of today, and I'm so sorry, if we don't take full advantage of today, then it's nobody's fault but our own. So get selfish, give yourself permission, and just do what it is that you need to do to be happy. And take care of yourself.
Yes, well said. And if someone agrees with that and they're listening, they're nodding, what's one small practical step or thing that they could do right away or maybe tomorrow just to, every journey starts with the first step to build a little bit of momentum. And I know that you probably have a lot of wisdom around this. So what's maybe just one small practical thing they can do to generate some energy towards a goal?
You know what? And I know this is probably not something that traditionally happens. One of the things I did too, to find joy, I bought a puppy.
Can
Who
we
wants
see?
to jump on my lap?
Yeah, let's see. Let's see.
Come on, darling. There she go. Who is just like having a little baby. I love you too.
Look at that
And
smile. Look how happy you are.
oh my God, she has made me so happy. I never wanted a dog in my life. But again, I was being intentional about what would make me happy, what would make me take time away from work. And having a puppy, a dog, because she's just like having a child. And so she makes me laugh, which is something too that I tell folks, do whatever you need to do to laugh, because as I've been reflecting over life, I haven't done a lot of laughing, David. And yeah, people's like, what do you mean you don't laugh? I haven't laughed as much as I know I should have. And that's because I focus way too much on other serious matters in life and taken for granted just those simple moments of pure laughter and pure joy. And so now I'm being intentional about, again, doing those things that bring me joy. And if that meant buying a puppy and helping me create more alignment in life, then that's what I'm doing. So, but again, we are in charge of our choices and decisions for us, no one else. And I had to, at a point, say, well, who's making you work this late? Who's making you do all of these things? And I'm like, okay, I am. And so I'm like, well, you need to tell yourself to stop. And then that comes to, okay, well, now I have to relearn a lot of things that I thought was the right way to do things. And maybe it was at one point in my life, but I'm like, I'm older now. I don't need to work as hard. I don't need to grind as hard. I don't need to work all the time because there are other things that I should be enjoying in this season of my life.
And then Stephanie, since we're together in the Unlost Cause community to support each other in terms of turning their lost cause into an unlost cause, what ask would you have of the Unlost Cause community?
Wow, that's a really good question. I would say when you realize or figure out what your unlost cause is, act on it. Just act on it. Because at the end of the day, again, we are the decision makers over our lives. And it really is up to each of us, to determine how we live this life and how we leave this life.
And I love how it's about agency, no victimhood, and we get to control our attitude and our behaviors based upon that, which is super inspiring. Now, for other listeners today, Stephanie, who are inspired by your story as well, how can they follow, support, or connect with you moving forward?
Sure. Well, I am on IG as the Selfish Luxury Traveler, as well as Disrupt for Change, which is my company. You can find me on IG. You can definitely go to my website, theselfishluxurytraveler.com or disruptforchange.com. I'm always happy to connect with folks looking to make new friends, who want to travel the world together and just live out the rest of this life as joyful as we can.
Wonderful. So I have to say is, Stephanie, you have spent decades building space for others, and now she's building space for herself. And the Selfish Luxury Traveler isn't just about travel. It's about reclaiming time, joy, and agency. And of course, you can follow Stephanie's amazing journey on Instagram at the Selfish Luxury Traveler and at Disrupt for Change. Finally, if you've been waiting to give yourself permission, take this as this conversation and a signal that now is your time. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, David.
Before you go, if you're inspired and want to be a part of something bigger, subscribe, like, and share to help more people reclaim their dreams and live true to themselves. Also, let me know if you or someone you know would be an inspiring guest on this show. Together, let's spark courage to live without regrets, the Unlost Cause way, one story and one person at a time.